Let's give you a little bit of music theory here. This is the A minor scale. It focuses just on the white notes of a piano. And this is called your 1, this is called your 2, this is called your 3, this is called your 4, this is called your 5, this is called your 6, this is called your 7th, and this is called your 1 again. You've actually returned to the 1 at the end of the scale, and you'll notice it's the same case for all scales. Now, when we say return, what do you mean by return? We mean that if we were to repeat this information 8 whole tones higher, you would get the exact same melody. So, now what can we do with this? Well, let's start to make a chord out of this. So this is a chord just looking at the first note and a fifth. Why do we call this a fifth? Well, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 notes higher. Remember, we're just looking at the white notes of the A minor scale. So this is your first. We call that a root, and this is called a 5. Now, essentially, this is another way of saying this is a power chord. It doesn't have a major or minor element to it. It's just a chord using a first and a fifth. It's an A minor scale, but this chord doesn't have a gender yet. It's just a chord. So, what do we have here? Well, we have this is a fourth, and this has a special name. We call this a subdominant, and this is a fifth. We call this a dominant. And the reason we call it this is they come up a lot when we're dealing with music theory. So just remember, a fourth is always called subdominant, and a fifth is always called a dominant. If you hear that in the future, you'll know what those are. Let's make these into major or minor chords though, so that they're no longer genderless, that they have a characteristic, some kind of sound nuance to them. So now we're turning chords into major or minor chords. You can have a minor scale, it's A minor scale, but the chords themselves can be major or minor as well. So here in the beginning, we have a minor sounding chord. Minor meaning it has this dark sound to it, and what distinguishes a minor chord is that the third is dictating whether the chord is in major or minor. And what dictates whether it's major or minor is how far it is from the first note. So this is always 3 semitones apart from the first or the root note to make it a minor third. 1, 2, 3 semitones. If it's 3 semitones, it's a minor chord. Then you have your first and a minor third and a fifth. If you were to make this 4 semitones, it's now a major chord. Minor, major. Now, a few things you'll notice is that some of the chords in the scale are major, and some of the chords in the scale are minor. So the distance between in the first chord is 3 semitones from the first to the third, so that's minor, minor. But now all of a sudden we have a major chord. It has this happy property to it. We return to minor, and then major again. Minor. So it's interesting to note how some of the chords in the scale will be happier sounding chords, and some of them will be minor, sadder, darker sounding chords. And this is something you can take advantage of, whether you want to emphasize a happy part in your song or a darker element in your song, depending on which chords you focus on. Are you focusing on and spending a long time on the major chord elements of it, or the minor elements of it? So on. So just looking at the notation, we have the I's and V's, and you'll see lowercase i's and you'll see capital I's, and the lowercase indicates minor, whereas the capital indicates major. You're probably also noticing that the chord over here has a little circle and says dim. That's just indicating it's a diminished chord. So it's saying that instead of a regular minor chord, we have a diminished minor chord, and that just means that the fifth is flatted. And that's not something for this video, but just pointing that out for you. Okay, let's also identify what is an inversion. So this is a chord And an inversion just means that you can rearrange the notes in this triad, in this chord, in any manner that you like, as long as you're using the same 3 notes. I can move a note higher. This is just an inversion, meaning that we have using the same notes in the triad chord, just in a different combination, but we're using the same notes. So I can rearrange these anywhere I like, and it's still the same chord. It's just an inversion of the chord. So that's what an inversion is. Sometimes that's confusing to people if they don't understand. It's just rearranging the chord into a different combination, but using the same note. So let's look at a relative minor or relative major. And essentially what we're saying here is that we can use the notes in the same scale, but using them starting on a different note, and it will have a happier property to it if we're looking at a relative major. So earlier we looked at the minor, but if we were to start on a C, we now have this happier sound. And essentially a relative minor or relative major is a scale that uses the exact same notes. And every minor has a relative major, every major has a relative minor. And the interesting property between them is that we're focusing more on the major thirds rather than the minor thirds. If we looked in the beginning here, when we were looking at the minor, A minor, you'll see that the third is a minor third, 1, 2, 3 semitones apart. Whereas if we were to look at the major scale, we notice that the third is now 4 semitones apart. So, now this is interesting. If we were to focus on the minor third elements, we're going to get a sad sound. But if we focus on the major third elements, we're going to get a happier sound. So here I have a little example. Let's have a listen to it. It's in the A minor scale, and it sounds quite sad. Why does it sound sad? Well, let's look at the chords first of all. These are minor chords. How do I know they're minor? Because of the distance between the root and the third is 3 semitones. So that's going to sound sad straight of all. And now in the melody side, we're focusing on the minor third elements again, because we're moving up to a minor third relationship, and we keep going around these notes. So that's why it's going to sound sad. What if we wanted to make this sound happier? How could we do this? Well, we could have a melody that's going to focus around the major third instead of the minor third. So that's interesting. All we've done is choose notes within the same scale, still only white notes, but the difference is that we now are focusing on the major third relationships instead of the minor third relationships, and we have this interesting flavor of a major melody over a minor chord. What if we made the chords themselves major? So now we have major in both sides. So this is just an example to show that you can mix and match major and minor even at the same time. You can have a major melody over minor chords, and you can do the opposite as well. You can have a minor melody over major chords. And this is really easy to flip and flop between major and minor. All you have to do is identify the chords that you want to focus on. Do you want to have a happier sounding sound or a sadder sounding sound? So this is just an overview to get you started understanding how the major and minor relationship works, and an easy way to start implementing it. Just identifying the thirds in your triad chord and choosing which ones you want to focus on.